The massive crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the monthly Galactic Council meeting. The chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in perfect circles that showed exactly where each species stood in the cosmic order. At the very center sat the most powerful civilizations. The Zephyrians floated in their energy pods, their blue-skinned bodies glowing with psychic power. They could read minds and move objects with thought alone. Next to them, the mechanical forms of the Keth Dominion clicked and whirred. Their technology was so advanced that their ships could travel between stars in mere hours. But even these mighty civilizations looked small compared to the beings who occupied the innermost circle. The Vanguard Collective sat in silence, their tall forms covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light itself. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, the civilization that all others feared and respected. For over 10,000 years they had ruled without challenge. Their ships could destroy entire star systems. A single Vanguard warrior could conquer a planet alone. In the outermost ring of the chamber, so far from the center that he needed binoculars to see the speakers clearly, sat Ambassador David Chen of Earth. His simple blue uniform looked pathetic compared to the exotic materials and energy fields that clothed the other representatives. He represented humanity, the newest and weakest member of the Galactic Council. Earth had been granted Class 7 status just 6 months ago. It was the lowest possible rank, barely above the primitive species that had not yet discovered fire. The humans had only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago, using crude chemical rockets that took decades to reach nearby systems. Their weapons were simple kinetic projectiles, bullets and missiles that the advanced civilizations found laughably primitive. The current speaker was Commander Thex of the Vanguard Collective. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. The Outer Rim territories require additional security. 3 more systems have reported pirate activity. Our psychic network can provide early warning, offered Speaker Zil of the Zephyrians, her thoughts translating directly into words that all species could understand. The Keth Dominion offers our newest patrol ships, added Unit Prime 7742, its mechanical voice perfectly modulated. Our vessels can respond within 0.3 standard time units. Ambassador Chen raised his hand tentatively. The gesture was so small and far away that most representatives didn't notice. But the chamber's sensors detected it, and a spotlight illuminated his distant seat. "The human wishes to speak," announced the chamber's AI in a tone that suggested mild amusement. "Commander." Thex turned his helmeted head toward Chen's position. Even from that distance, Chen could feel the weight of the Vanguard's attention like a physical pressure. What could the newest species possibly contribute to this discussion? Chen stood up, his knees slightly shaky. Earth has extensive experience with piracy in our own system. We've developed effective patrol strategies using smaller, more numerous ships. Perhaps we could share our methods or provide support vessels. The silence that followed was broken by what could only be described as laughter, though it came in many forms. The Zephyrians' amusement sparkled like silver bells in the minds of everyone present. The Keth units produced mechanical sounds like grinding gears. Other species made various noises of derision. Commander Thex raised one gauntleted hand, and the chamber fell silent instantly. The apes who barely learned to leave their gravity well wished to teach strategy to civilizations that have sailed between stars since before their sun was born. His voice carried no anger, only the casual dismissal one might give to a child offering to help with adult work. Human vessels require months to travel distances our ships cross in minutes, continued Thex. Their weapons cannot penetrate the shields of a basic cargo hauler. Their soldiers die from radiation that would not inconvenience our younglings. What possible assistance could they provide? Chen felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he remained standing. We may not have your technology, but we have different perspectives. Sometimes a fresh approach can solve old problems. Fresh approach, repeated Unit Prime 7742, its optical sensors focusing on Chen with mechanical precision. Human cognitive patterns show high levels of emotional irrationality. Their decision-making processes are compromised by biological impulses. Statistical analysis indicates a 97.3% probability that human strategic input would decrease mission effectiveness. More laughter filled the chamber. Chen noticed that even some of the mid-level civilizations were joining in, eager to distance themselves from humanity's weakness by mocking it openly. Speaker Zill of the Zephyrians tilted her elongated head, her large eyes glowing with psychic energy. I sense sincerity in the human's thoughts, but also profound ignorance. His mind lacks the neural pathways necessary for truly strategic thinking. It is quaint. The human means well, said Ambassador Crix of the Stellar Federation, a mid-tier civilization that had been trying to ingratiate themselves with the major powers. But perhaps it would be better if Earth focused on internal development. Maybe, in a few thousand years, they will be ready to contribute meaningfully to galactic affairs. Chen remained standing despite the humiliation. Around him, conversations resumed as if he no longer existed. The major powers began discussing patrol routes and ship deployments, strategies involving technology that Earth couldn't even understand, let alone produce. Commander Thex gestured with one hand and holographic displays showed the disputed territories. Red dots marked pirate attacks, while blue lines indicated proposed patrol routes. The Vanguard will deploy 3 battle-class vessels to the Outer Rim. This should eliminate the threat within one standard cycle. 3 ships to patrol 17 systems? Asked Speaker Zill. Each battle-class vessel can sterilize a planet in under an hour, Thex replied matter-of-factly. The pirates will surrender or be destroyed. There is no third option. Chen watched the casual discussion of such overwhelming force with a mixture of awe and horror. The Vanguard spoke of destroying worlds the way Earth's military might discuss bombing a building. The gap between humanity and these civilizations wasn't just technological, it was philosophical, almost spiritual. As the meeting continued, Chen found himself largely ignored. When votes were called, his input was recorded but carried no real weight. Class 7 civilizations received only 1 vote compared to the 50 votes each that the major powers wielded. His presence was more symbolic than functional, a reminder to the galaxy that even the weakest species could aspire to something greater. The meeting concluded with the usual formalities. The major powers made their decisions, the mid-tier civilizations voiced their support, and the minor species accepted whatever was decided for them. Chen gathered his simple paper notes, another source of amusement for representatives who stored information directly in their enhanced minds or quantum storage devices. As he walked toward the exit, Chen overheard a conversation between 2 Stellar Federation representatives. Can you believe they actually gave the humans a seat on the council? One said in their whistling language, which Chen's translator converted to text on his wrist display. Political necessity, replied the other. They control a strategic star system, even if they don't realize it. Better to have them inside making meaningless contributions than outside causing trouble. Chen paused at the chamber's exit, looking back at the magnificent space where the galaxy's fate was decided. The Vanguard representatives were departing through their own special portal, a rift in space that closed behind them with a sound like reality tearing. The Zephyrians dissolved into pure energy and flowed away through the building's power conduits. The Keth units simply vanished, probably teleported back to their ships. In a few minutes, Chen would board his own vessel, a converted cargo hauler that would take 3 weeks to reach Earth. He would file his report with the United Nations, describing humanity's continuing marginalization in galactic affairs. Earth's leaders would debate whether to invest more resources in trying to catch up with galactic technology or to focus on improving their own small corner of space. But as Chen walked toward his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The galaxy seemed stable with its clear hierarchies and established powers. The Vanguard had ruled for millennia and showed no signs of weakness. Yet there was something in the air, a tension that his human intuition detected but his rational mind couldn't explain. He had no way of knowing that in just 3 months, everything the galaxy thought it knew about power and civilization would be turned upside down. The mighty would fall, the weak would rise, and humanity would find itself at the center of the greatest mystery the galaxy had ever faced. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives arrived through hasty jumps across space, their ships appearing in flashes of light around Nexus Prime. The usual order and ceremony were forgotten. Species that normally maintained strict diplomatic protocol were talking over each other, their voices creating a chaos of languages and translation errors. Ambassador Chen sat in his usual distant seat, but for once, no one was paying attention to the seating hierarchy. Something had happened that made the galaxy's rigid social structure seem suddenly meaningless. 3 days ago, the Vanguard Collective had simply vanished, not defeated, not destroyed, vanished. Speaker Zill of the Zephyrians was the first to address the chaos. Her usually calm mental projections were tinged with something Chen had never sensed before: fear. Our psychic network spans half the galaxy. We have touched the minds of 1 trillion beings. But where the Vanguard territories once thrived, we sensed nothing. Not death, not destruction. Nothing. Unit Prime 7742 of the Keth Dominion whirred with unusual agitation. Sensor sweeps of Vanguard space confirm 0 life signs, 0 energy signatures, 0 technological emissions, probability of simultaneous equipment failure across 17,000 worlds, less than 0.001%. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. The Stellar Federation representatives were clustered together, their whistling languages creating a sound like wind through broken glass. The crystalline beings of the Nexus commune were flashing rapid colors, their equivalent of shouting. Even the normally stoic representatives of the Iron World showed signs of distress, their mechanical implants sparking with nervous energy. Ambassador Crix of the Stellar Federation managed to make himself heard above the noise. How is this possible? The Vanguard have ruled for 10,000 years. Their technology was beyond anything we could imagine. Their warriors were immortal. Chen leaned forward in his seat, straining to hear every word. The details emerging from the investigation were impossible to believe. Entire worlds that had been home to billions of Vanguard citizens were now empty. Their massive fortress cities stood intact but abandoned. Their ships were gone from every spaceport. Their orbital stations drifted silent in the void. "We sent a joint investigation team to Vanguard Prime," reported General Thack of the Iron Worlds, his cybernetic eye glowing red as he accessed his files. "What we found defies explanation. The capital city shows no signs of battle or struggle. Buildings are intact. Power systems still function. Food was found on tables, still warm." Speaker Zill's mental voice carried a tremor of confusion. "I personally led a team of our most powerful psychics to scan the abandoned worlds. We found traces, emotional imprints left in the quantum foam. But they make no sense. In the final moments before the disappearance, every Vanguard mind we could read was filled with joy." "Joy?" Unit Prime 7742's mechanical voice rose in pitch, indicating surprise in his species. "Please clarify this emotional reading." "Pure, overwhelming happiness," Zill explained, as if they were experiencing the most wonderful moment of their existence. There was no fear, no confusion, no resistance. They left willingly, eagerly. The silence that followed was more frightening than all the previous chaos. Chen felt a chill run down his spine. A civilization that had never shown weakness, never retreated from any battle, had simply walked away from everything they had built, and they had been happy to do it. "The economic implications are catastrophic," announced Trademaster Vex of the Commercial Alliance, his multiple arms gesturing frantically. "The Vanguard controlled 60% of galactic shipping routes. Their disappearance has collapsed trade networks across 17 sectors. Stock prices have fallen by 80%. 3 civilizations have already declared bankruptcy." Chen noticed that none of the major powers seemed concerned about economics. Their attention was focused on something much more fundamental: survival. If the Vanguard could disappear without warning, what did that mean for everyone else? "We need to understand what happened," declared Unit Prime 7742. "The Keth Dominion volunteers to lead a comprehensive investigation. Our analytical capabilities are superior to—" "You will do no such thing. The voice belonged to Premier Hawk of the Stellar Federation, and it carried an authority that surprised everyone. This is clearly the work of some unknown hostile force, something powerful enough to eliminate the Vanguard without a fight. Until we understand the nature of this threat, all civilizations will remain in their home systems. Speaker Zill's mental projection flickered with disagreement. Isolation will solve nothing. The Zephyrian consciousness demands answers. Our psychic network must probe deeper into Vanguard space. We will uncover the truth. Absolutely not. Premier Hawk's voice rose to nearly a shout. Whatever took the Vanguard might be drawn to psychic energy. Your probing could bring this disaster down on all of us. The argument that followed revealed how deeply the Vanguard's disappearance had shaken the galaxy's confidence. Civilizations that had cooperated for millennia were now suspicious of each other. Some suggested that the Zephyrians had somehow caused the vanishing with their psychic experiments. Others accused the Keth Dominion of developing a weapon that had gotten out of control. Chen watched the breakdown of galactic civilization with growing alarm. Without the Vanguard as the ultimate authority, the complex web of treaties and agreements that held the galaxy together was falling apart. Already reports were coming in of border disputes, trade wars, and military buildups as civilizations prepared for an uncertain future. Perhaps, Chen said quietly, then louder when no one heard him. Perhaps we should consider all possibilities. The chamber fell silent as every representative turned to stare at the human in the distant seat. Premier Hawk's expression showed barely contained irritation. What could Earth possibly contribute to this crisis? Chen stood up, his heart pounding but his voice steady. We're asking what could make the Vanguard disappear. Maybe we should ask what could make them want to disappear. Explain, commanded Unit Prime 7742. Everyone assumes they were taken by force, but your own investigations show no signs of resistance. They left willingly. Maybe they found something better than what they had here. Speaker Zill's psychic presence focused on Chen with uncomfortable intensity. Better than Galactic Dominion? Better than immortality and unlimited power? What could possibly be better than what the Vanguard possessed? Chen felt like a student trying to answer a question far beyond his understanding, but he pressed on. I don't know, but in human history people have left behind wealth and power for things they valued more. Maybe the Vanguard found something we don't understand yet. The chamber erupted in derisive sounds again, but they were weaker than before. The galaxy's confidence in its own understanding had been badly shaken. The human raises an interesting point, admitted General Thak grudgingly. Our investigation teams found something else. Scattered throughout Vanguard territories were structures we've never seen before. They appear to be doorways, but they lead nowhere. Our sensors cannot penetrate them. Doorways? Premier Hawk leaned forward. What kind of doorways? Impossible ones, General Thak replied. They seem to exist in more dimensions than our instruments can detect. The Vanguard built them in their final months, apparently abandoning all other projects to focus on their construction. Unit Prime 7742 processed this information with visible calculations running across his display screens. Hypothesis. The Vanguard discovered a method of travel to an unknown destination. They departed voluntarily through these doorways. But where could they go? Demanded Premier Hawk. They already controlled the most advanced civilization in known space. Chen was about to suggest that maybe there were things beyond known space when the chamber's emergency systems activated. Red lights flashed, and a mechanical voice announced, Priority transmission incoming, source, Deep Space Monitor Station, Gamma 7. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the chamber, the station commander, a grizzled veteran from the Iron Worlds whose cybernetic implants were sparking with excitement. Council members, you need to see this immediately. We've detected massive energy readings from the direction of former Vanguard space. What kind of energy? Asked Speaker Zill. Unknown configuration, but the readings suggest something enormous, and something the size of a solar system, just appeared on our sensors. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of translation devices and the whir of mechanical life support systems. Chen felt his mouth go dry. First the Vanguard disappear, now something massive appears in their territory. How long until we can get visual confirmation? Asked Unit Prime 7742. Already have it, sir. Transmitting now. The chamber's main display activated, showing a view of deep space. At first, Chen saw nothing but stars. Then the image zoomed in, enhanced by sensors far more advanced than anything Earth possessed. What they saw defied description. It was a structure, or possibly a living thing, that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. It flickered between dimensions, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, always impossible to look at directly without feeling dizzy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like a song made of light and mathematics. "Is it a ship?" whispered Ambassador Crix. The United Nations Security Council meeting took place in a bunker deep beneath Geneva. Ambassador Chen had returned to Earth 3 weeks after the emergency Galactic Council session, carrying news that had sent shockwaves through human civilization. The Vanguard were gone, something impossible had appeared in their space, and the galaxy was spiraling toward chaos. President Martinez of the Global Defense Initiative looked tired as she reviewed Chen's report for the 3rd time. "So the Council's response is to hide and hope the problem goes away?" "Essentially, yes," Chen replied. Premier Hawk convinced them to impose a total quarantine on former Vanguard space. No ships, no probes, no investigation of any kind. They're calling it protective isolation. "What about that structure your deep space monitors detected?" asked General Thompson, his weathered face creased with concern. "Still there. Still impossible to understand. The other civilizations are treating it like a bomb that might explode if they get too close." Secretary General Okafor leaned forward in her chair. "And they've forbidden us from investigating?" Chen nodded grimly. Direct quote from Premier Hawk. "Leave this to civilizations that matter. Humanity will remain in their home system for their own protection. We're essentially under house arrest." The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers. Chen could see the frustration on every face around the table. Earth had spent decades trying to earn respect in the galactic community, only to be dismissed and ignored when something truly important happened. "Screw that," said Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, her Spanish accent thickening with anger. "We didn't crawl out of the caves and reach for the stars just to be told to stay home when things get interesting." President Martinez raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. The Council thinks we're too primitive to help? Fine. Let them underestimate us. We'll find out what happened to the Vanguard ourselves." General Thompson shook his head. "Sarah, be realistic. We have 12 ships capable of interstellar travel. The journey to former Vanguard space would take months with our technology. Even if we could get there, what could we do that civilizations with far superior technology couldn't?" Rodriguez smiled, and Chen recognized the expression. He'd seen it before on the faces of human explorers, scientists, and rebels throughout history. It was the look of someone about to do something dangerous and necessary. "Maybe that's exactly what we need," she said. "Our primitive technology. Think about it. Every other civilization relies on similar principles. Energy shields, faster-than-light drives, quantum sensors. They're all variations on the same advanced themes, but our technology is fundamentally different." Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, Earth's lead physicist, looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing the sensor data. "Admiral Rodriguez has a point. Our ships use chemical propulsion and nuclear reactors, technologies that most of the galaxy abandoned millions of years ago. Our sensors are optical and electromagnetic, not quantum or psychic. So?" asked President Martinez. "So maybe we can see things they can't," Hayes explained. "It's like the difference between looking at something with your eyes versus looking at it with an X-ray machine. Different tools reveal different information." Chen felt a spark of excitement. The investigation teams mentioned that their sensors couldn't penetrate those doorway structures. But what if that's because their sensors are too advanced? What if the doorways are transparent to primitive technology? Admiral Rodriguez stood up and moved to the room's large display screen, which showed a map of known space. Former Vanguard. Territory was marked in red. A vast area covering hundreds of star systems, all now declared off-limits by the Galactic Council. "I have a ship ready to go," she announced. "The ESS Pioneer. It's our newest exploration vessel, but by galactic standards it's a museum piece. Chemical rockets, metal hull, basic computers. If we're going to be treated like primitives, let's use that to our advantage." "This is incredibly dangerous," warned General Thompson. "If the Council finds out we disobeyed their quarantine order, it could mean expulsion from galactic civilization. And if we don't find out what happened to the Vanguard, there might not be a galactic civilization left to be expelled from," Rodriguez countered. President Martinez looked around the room, studying each face carefully. "This mission would have to be completely secret. No official approval, no government backing. If you're caught, we'll have to deny any knowledge of your activities." "Understood," Rodriguez replied without hesitation. "How long would it take to reach Vanguard space?" asked Secretary General Okafor. Dr. Hayes consulted her calculations. 4 months to the nearest former Vanguard system, another month to reach their core territories if we don't find anything useful at the border. That's 5 months the galaxy will be falling apart while we wait for answers, Chen observed. The longer this mystery goes unsolved, the more paranoid and unstable the other civilizations become. President Martinez made her decision. "Do it. But keep the team small and make sure they understand the risks. If something goes wrong out there, we can't help them." 3 weeks later, the ESS Pioneer departed from Luna Base under cover of a routine survey mission to the outer planets. Only 6 people knew the ship's real destination: Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Hayes, Engineer Mark Santos, Communications Officer Lisa Park, Security Chief Tom Mitchell, and Xenobiologist Dr. James Wright. The journey to Vanguard space took exactly 4 months and 2 days. During the long trip, the crew used Earth's vast digital libraries to study every piece of information they could find about the Vanguard civilization. What they learned painted a picture of a species that had achieved everything the galaxy considered desirable: immortality, unlimited energy, the ability to reshape matter at will, dominion over thousands of worlds. So why would they leave all this behind? Wondered Dr. Wright as he reviewed files on Vanguard culture. They had everything. Maybe that was the problem, suggested Engineer Santos. I've noticed something in all these reports. The Vanguard never seemed to create anything new. They conquered, they controlled, they administered, but when did they last invent something? When did they last explore for the joy of discovery rather than to expand their territory? Dr. Hayes looked up from her physics calculations. That's an interesting point. Most of their technology seems to be refinements of things they developed thousands of years ago. It's as if they'd stopped growing. Maybe that's what the doorways were about, Captain Rodriguez said from the pilot's seat. Maybe they found a way to grow again. When the Pioneer finally reached the edge of former Vanguard territory, the crew was struck by how normal everything looked. The stars shone with their usual light. Space was as empty as always, and their instruments detected no immediate dangers. "Beginning. Scan of the Xerion system," announced Officer Park. It was one of the Vanguard's major industrial centers, population of 12 billion before the disappearance. The system's planets appeared on their screens as the Pioneer's simple optical telescopes focused on each world. Xerion Prime, the main planet, looked eerily peaceful from orbit. City lights still glowed across the night side, indicating that automated systems were maintaining power distribution. "Landing on the surface," Captain Rodriguez announced as she guided their small shuttle through the atmosphere. What they found in the planet's capital city defied all expectations. The streets were clean and undamaged. Buildings stood intact, their alien architecture gleaming in the alien sun. Vehicles sat where they had been abandoned, some with doors still open as if their owners had stepped out for just a moment. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had happened to 12 billion Vanguard citizens. Dr. Wright was examining a public square when he called out excitedly, "Over here! I found one of those doorway structures." The team gathered around what looked like an archway made of a material that seemed to shift between metal and crystal, and something else entirely. It stood about 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide, but looking through it showed nothing but the street behind. The other investigation team said their sensors couldn't penetrate these, Dr. Hayes said, pulling out her simple electromagnetic scanner. Let's see what our primitive technology can detect. The scanner immediately began beeping rapidly. Hayes stared at the readings with growing excitement. I'm getting massive electromagnetic signatures. Whatever this thing is, it's generating fields and frequencies that most advanced sensors would filter out as background noise. What does that mean? Asked Captain Rodriguez. It means this isn't just a doorway, Hayes replied, her voice filled with wonder. It's some kind of dimensional interface. The energy patterns suggest it's connected to somewhere else. Engineer Santos was examining the structure's base. Look at this construction technique. It's definitely Vanguard work, but it's different from everything else we've seen. More organic, less rigid. As if they were learning a new way to build. As the team explored more of the city, they found dozens more doorways. All were identical. All generated the same strange energy readings that their primitive sensors could detect, but advanced galactic technology could not. The ESS Pioneer had been exploring former Vanguard territory for 2 months when Dr. Elizabeth Hayes made the discovery that would change everything. The crew had investigated 17 worlds, each one showing the same pattern: cities abandoned, in perfect condition, doorway structures broadcasting their strange electromagnetic invitations, and no signs of the billions of beings who had once lived there. But the 18th world was different. Vanguard Prime had been the heart of their civilization for over 10,000 years. The planet was larger than Earth, with massive continents, covered in crystalline cities that stretched from ocean to ocean. The capital, Eternal Nexus, had once housed nearly 50 billion Vanguard citizens in towers that reached into the upper atmosphere. As the Pioneer's shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, Captain Rodriguez noticed something that hadn't appeared on their long-range scans. Are those ruins? She asked, pointing toward what looked like collapsed structures on the outskirts of the capital. Dr. Wright examined the view through their simple optical instruments. They're not ruins. They're old. Really old. Look at the architectural style. It's completely different from everything else on the planet. The ruins covered several square kilometers of what had once been prime real estate in the galactic capital. The structures were made of a dark stone that seemed to absorb light, and their design was unlike anything in Vanguard records. Instead of the sharp angles and geometric precision that characterized Vanguard architecture, these buildings flowed like frozen water, with curves and spirals that seemed almost organic. Why would the Vanguard leave ancient ruins in the middle of their capital city? Wondered Engineer Santos. Maybe they didn't build them, Dr. Hayes suggested quietly. Maybe they were already here when the Vanguard arrived. The team landed near the ruins and began their exploration on foot. The moment they stepped out of the shuttle, their instruments went crazy. The electromagnetic readings that had been strong near the doorway structures were overwhelming here. Dr. Hayes had to turn down the sensitivity on her scanner to keep it from overloading. Whatever these ruins are, they're the source, she announced. Every doorway structure we've found has been connected to this place through some kind of quantum entanglement. The entrance to the main ruin was a simple archway carved with symbols that predated any known form of writing. Security Chief Mitchell ran his hand over the strange markings, feeling them tingle against his skin. These symbols, they almost look familiar, like something from a dream. Inside the ruins, the team found chambers that defied architectural logic. Rooms seemed larger inside than outside. Corridors led in directions that their compasses insisted didn't exist. And everywhere there were more of those haunting symbols carved into the dark stone. Dr. Wright was documenting the strange architecture when Officer Park called out from a chamber deeper in the ruins. You need to see this. I found something incredible. The team gathered around what appeared to be a wall covered in symbols. But as they watched, the symbols began to glow with a soft blue light. The light pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat, and the electromagnetic readings spiked with each pulse. It's responding to our presence, Hayes whispered, her scanner beeping frantically. Dr. Wright stepped closer to the wall, and the symbols grew brighter. As he reached out to touch them, the stone surface became translucent, revealing layers of meaning beneath. The symbols weren't just writing. They were a three-dimensional record, a library of information stored in the very structure of the wall. I think I can understand some of this, Wright said, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. It's not language as we know it. It's direct transfer of concepts. What Wright saw in the glowing symbols was a history that stretched back millions of years. The ruins hadn't been built by the Vanguard or any species they knew. They were the work of beings that existed beyond physical reality, entities that lived in the spaces between dimensions, in the quantum foam that underlied all existence. They're called the architects, Wright translated haltingly. They've been watching the galaxy for longer than our star has existed. They guide species that reach a certain level of development. Guide them how? Asked Captain Rodriguez. Wright touched another section of the wall, and new symbols flowed into his understanding. Evolution, but not biological evolution. Something deeper. They help species transcend physical existence and join them in higher dimensions of reality. The implications hit the team like a physical blow. The Vanguard hadn't been conquered or destroyed. They had graduated. After 10,000 years of physical dominance, they had been deemed ready for the next stage of existence. But why the Vanguard? Wondered Santos. What made them special? Wright continued reading the symbol story, his face growing pale as he understood more. It wasn't about their technology or their power. The architects don't care about military strength or scientific advancement. They're looking for something else. What? Dr. Hayes asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Consciousness, awareness, the ability to find meaning in existence beyond simple survival and dominance. The wall showed them images, not visual recordings, but direct impressions of understanding. They saw the Vanguard in their final years, no longer the warlike conquerors they had once been. The symbols revealed a species that had grown tired of endless expansion, weary of ruling through fear. In their last centuries, they had begun to question the meaning of their existence. They started creating art, Wright said in amazement. The most powerful military force in the galaxy began writing poetry and composing music. They were learning to find beauty in complexity, meaning in mystery. And that made them ready for transcendence? Asked Officer Park. Yes, but there's more. Wright's voice dropped to a whisper. The architects have been testing other species too. The symbols showed dozens of civilizations that have faced this choice over millions of years. Most failed the, test. How did they fail? Rodriguez asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Wright touched a different section, and the symbols showed darker images. Species that chose to remain in physical reality, clinging to power and territory. Civilizations that became so advanced they lost touch with wonder and curiosity. Races that achieved immortality but forgot what made life worth living. They stagnated, Wright explained. They reached a peak of development and stopped growing. The architects watched them for thousands of years, hoping they would choose evolution, but they never did. Eventually, they were left behind as the universe moved forward without them. Dr. Hayes was studying her scanner readings, trying to understand the energy patterns surrounding them. The doorway structures, they're not just gateways, they're tests. They only respond to species that have developed beyond simple technological advancement. What kind of test? Asked Mitchell. Consciousness, emotional depth, the ability to find meaning in struggle and create beauty in the face of mortality. Hayes looked up from her instruments with a mixture of excitement and fear. The electromagnetic patterns are incredibly complex. They're not just energy, they're information, music, poetry, art. The doorways are broadcasting the combined creative output of every species that has successfully transcended. Wright continued translating the wall symbols, and what he found made his hands shake. The architects are still watching. They're monitoring every civilization in the galaxy, waiting to see which ones will be ready for the next step. Monitoring how? Santos asked. Through consciousness itself. Every time a species creates something beautiful, every time they choose compassion over cruelty, every time they find meaning in suffering, the architects notice. Captain Rodriguez felt a chill of understanding. They're watching us too, aren't they? Watching humanity. Wright nodded slowly. According to these symbols, humans are interesting to them. Our technological development is primitive, but our emotional and creative development is unusual. We create art about our own mortality. We find beauty in struggle. We form deep bonds despite knowing they'll be broken by death. And that matters to beings who exist beyond physical reality? Hayes asked. It's the foundation of higher consciousness, Wright replied. The ability to find meaning in temporary existence, to create beauty despite knowing it won't last forever. The Vanguard spent 10,000 years learning what humans seem to understand instinctively. As the team explored deeper into the ruins, they found more evidence of the architect's influence. Chamber after chamber contained records of species that had faced the choice between physical dominance and conscious evolution. Some, like the Vanguard, had chosen transcendence. Others had rejected the invitation and continued their existence as purely physical beings. What happened to the species that refused? Asked Officer Park. Wright touched another symbol sequence and his face grew grave. They're still out there, still growing more powerful, still expanding their territories. But they've cut themselves off from any possibility of growth beyond the physical. The architects no longer watch them. They're on their own. Dr. Hayes was performing final scans of the ruins when her equipment detected something that made her gasp. Captain, we need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Ambassador David Chen stood before the United Nations General Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. It had been 6 months since the pioneers returned from Vanguard space, and in that time, everything had changed. The secret mission was no longer secret. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations had detected the ship's journey and demanded explanations. But the explanations Earth provided had shattered the galactic order more completely than the Vanguard's disappearance ever could. The delegation from the Stellar Federation is demanding immediate answers, Secretary General Okafor whispered to Chen as he prepared to address the assembly. They've been broadcasting threats for 3 days. The Zephyrians are claiming we've violated 50 different galactic treaties. Even the Keth Dominion is demanding access to our findings. Chen nodded grimly. Through the chamber's windows, he could see the lights of alien ships filling Earth's sky. Every major civilization had sent fleets to Sol system, ostensibly for diplomatic negotiations, but actually to intimidate humanity into sharing what they had learned. What humanity had learned was that the entire foundation of galactic civilization was built on a misunderstanding. Power, technology, military strength. None of it mattered to the forces that truly shaped the universe. The architects cared only about consciousness, creativity, and the ability to find meaning in struggle. The President is ready to begin the broadcast, announced General Thompson from his position near the communications array. Every word spoken in this chamber would be transmitted not only across Earth, but to every ship in orbit and every civilization in the galaxy. President Martinez stepped forward to address both the human assembly and the watching galaxy. 6 months ago, we sent a small exploration vessel to investigate the mystery of the Vanguard disappearance. What they discovered changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. She gestured to Dr. Wright, who had spent weeks preparing his translation of the architect ruins. Dr. Wright, please share your findings with the assembly. Wright approached the podium with hands that still trembled when he thought about what he had seen in those ancient chambers. The Vanguard were not destroyed or conquered. They were invited to transcend physical existence and join a collective of evolved beings called the Architects. This invitation comes to all species that develop sufficient consciousness and emotional depth. The assembly erupted in whispers and gasps. In orbit above Earth, Chen knew that similar reactions were occurring on alien ships as translators worked to convert Wright's words into hundreds of different languages. The architects have been watching our galaxy for millions of years, Wright continued. They guide species that show potential for growth beyond simple physical existence. The test is not technological advancement or military power. It is the ability to create beauty, find meaning in temporary existence, and form deep emotional connections despite the certainty of loss. Captain Rodriguez joined Wright at the podium, her uniform bearing new decorations from Earth's grateful government. What we found in the ruins suggests that humanity possesses these qualities in unusual abundance. While other civilizations spent millennia developing advanced technology, we have always created art about our mortality, found beauty in struggle, and valued emotional connections above personal safety. Through the chamber's communication systems, they could hear the chaos erupting on alien ships. Premier Hawk of the Stellar Federation was demanding proof. The Zephyrians were insisting that their psychic abilities made them more evolved than primitive humans. The Keth Dominion was calculating the probability that humanity's claims were accurate, but the argument was settled by an event that no one had anticipated. The air in the assembly chamber began to shimmer, and reality itself seemed to bend. The representatives from Earth looked around in wonder and fear as the space above the podium started to glow with the same blue light they had seen in the architect ruins. "Don't be afraid," Dr. Wright whispered, recognizing the energy signature. "They're here." The light coalesced into a form that was almost impossible to describe. It was not physical in any way that humans could understand, but it conveyed presence, intelligence, and something that felt like infinite kindness. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in the minds of everyone present, in whatever language they understood best. "Greetings, children of Earth." The simple words sent shockwaves through the assembly and across the galaxy. In orbit, alien sensors detected energy readings that exceeded anything in their databases. The being that had appeared was clearly beyond the technology of any known civilization. "I am a representative of those you call the architects. We have watched your species with great interest since you first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond your world." President Martinez stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Why have you come to us?" "Because humanity has reached a critical point in its development. You stand at the threshold of a choice that will determine your species' future for all time." In orbit, Premier Hawk was broadcasting frantic demands for explanation. "What choice? Why weren't we offered this choice? We demand equal treatment." The architect's attention seemed to turn toward the orbiting ships, and when it spoke again, its mental voice carried a sadness that brought tears to many human eyes. "Every species receives this choice when they are ready. Some, like the Vanguard, require millennia of growth to develop sufficient consciousness. Others, like the Zephyrians and Keth, have chosen to prioritize different forms of development." "What makes humanity ready?" asked Dr. Hayes, who had been studying the energy readings with fascination. "Your species possesses a quality that is rare in the galaxy. You create meaning from limitation. Your art is beautiful because you know it will not last forever. Your love is deep because you understand that it can be lost. Your courage is remarkable because you act despite knowing. You are small and fragile in a vast universe." The being's presence grew stronger, and holographic images began to appear throughout the chamber. They showed scenes from human history: a painter working by candlelight, soldiers sharing their last meal before battle, a mother singing to a child who would never live to see adulthood, scientists dedicating their lives to questions they knew they would never fully answer. Most advanced civilizations lose this quality as they gain power. They become immortal and forget the value of temporary existence. They become invulnerable and forget the meaning of courage. They conquer death and lose the appreciation for life that makes consciousness truly beautiful. Secretary General Okafor stepped forward. "What choice are you offering us?" "The same choice offered to the Vanguard and every species that develops: sufficient consciousness. You may transcend physical existence and join us in dimensions beyond space and time. You will become part of a collective dedicated to nurturing the growth of younger species and exploring mysteries that physical beings cannot imagine." The chamber fell silent as the magnitude of the offer sank in. They were being invited to evolve beyond humanity itself to become something greater than any physical civilization could achieve. But President Martinez asked the question that would define Earth's response. What happens to those who remain? Physical existence continues as it always has, but the opportunity for transcendence once refused does not come again to the same species. You would develop along purely physical lines, eventually achieving great power, but remaining forever cut off from higher forms of consciousness. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Some argued that humanity should accept transcendence immediately. It was clearly the superior form of existence. Others insisted that humanity wasn't ready to abandon physical reality, that there was still too much to learn and experience in the material universe. Dr. Wright offered a perspective that surprised everyone. What if we don't have to choose as a species? What if individuals could make their own choice? The architect's presence seemed to brighten with something like approval. This is wisdom beyond your years as a civilization. Yes, the choice can be individual rather than collective. Some humans may transcend while others remain to guide and nurture those who come after. The solution that emerged from the debate was uniquely human in its complexity and compassion. Rather than making a single choice for all humanity, Earth would allow individuals to decide for themselves. Some would accept transcendence and become guides for younger species. Others would remain in physical reality, dedicating themselves to helping other civilizations develop the consciousness necessary for their own eventual choice. Ambassador Chen volunteered to be among the first to transcend, along with Dr. Wright and several others who felt called to explore higher dimensions of existence. Captain Rodriguez chose to remain, as did most of Earth's leaders, feeling that humanity still had work to do in physical reality. The galaxy's reaction to Earth's choice was swift and dramatic. The major civilizations that had expected to be chosen over primitive humanity descended into chaos. Some accused the architects of favoritism, others declared war on Earth, only to discover that the transcended humans now possessed abilities that made such threats meaningless.